So this was back in 2015. I was one of the designers on the Art Brain, and it's both an installation and it's also a LARP. We made it for the Henny Onsdag Center for Contemporary Art, and it was commissioned to teach 400 children aged 5 to 9 about 2 of the exhibited artists in one day. So this is one of them. This is Hilma af Klint. She lived her whole life in Sweden, and she was immensely productive and also a pioneer surrealist. She painted more than 1,000 paintings in her life, but nobody knew, because her great mentor, Rudolf Steiner, told her that the world wasn't ready for her art. So in her will, she wrote that none of her paintings were to be exhibited until 40 years after she had passed away. So then in the 80s, they discovered her work and understood that this was brilliant, but no one had known before that. You have to get all this. There will be a test in the end. This is Kurt Schwitters. He's worked in very many forms. He's worked with sculpture, he's worked with paintings, he sort of invented collage art, and he's worked with sound, and is also one of the pioneers of what we call installation art today. And in 1937 he had to escape from Germany because the Nazi party declared that his art was degenerate, and he came to Norway, where he lived until 1940, and Norway was occupied, so he had to escape to England. And we were going to teach that to 400 children in one day. Before I continue, I want you to picture an art gallery in your mind. It probably looks something like this. So what's wrong with that? Well, you can't really do anything in an art gallery. If you're a kid, art galleries suck. Everything is too high up. I don't know if you've ever tried to walk around an art gallery on your knees, because if you try to do that, you realize you can't see any of the paintings. And you're not allowed to touch anything. Children are very tactile. They want to touch things, they want to feel the texture of things and understand it in that way. And they love to run. Watching art is this really reflective exercise where you walk around and you keep your distance to the art, just like both physically and mentally in a way. So there's nothing to do. Children love the technical museums, but because everything at the technical museum has a button, you can make it do something. And that's great for children. So how do we take an art gallery and add buttons that children can push? This isn't the first time we have worked with an art gallery. This is Living Pictures. We did that at Lillehammer Art Museum in 2014. And that was a piece where we created the story that these characters had escaped or disappeared from their pictures, and the children had to help them find the way back. So here you see Martin and Nora, they're both here today, and the paintings they had disappeared from. And that's really easy to get, and children understand it, and children love to help. So that's a lot of fun. But how do you turn something like this into a character? How do you make colors and shapes playable? Our first idea was to make a detective story, like there had been a crime and the children had to look for clues inside the abstract art to find out who the criminal was. But when you do that, you create this impression that it's one correct way to interpret art. And also it's really difficult to make a detective story that's exciting for 5-year-olds and 9-year-olds at the same time. And then we played with the idea of like a story about discovering an alien culture in space, and they had to be space anthropologists and like understand the culture of the aliens through looking at the art. But that's very complex. Most children don't know what an anthropologist do. And also, how do you turn a museum into a space station? So what happened? Like we went so many trips to Henny Onsdag to try to figure this out. And at one point, one of us said, I wonder what made Schwitters cry. And that's when it finally clicked together. Because art is very often about conveying feelings. So we could make a story about the feelings represented in the art. Where do feelings live? They live inside our brains. So what if the museum has its own brain where it sorts all the art based on what feelings are inside the art? So then we built an art brain inside the gallery. Outside the brain, the children met with the main archivist of the museum. And he asked them if they wanted to be an art agent. And if they said yes, they would receive an agent card. So the agent card, it functions as a character sheet in a way. They get to write down who they are and how old they are. And we also primed them for what was going to happen, like putting in like the three main feelings we were working with here to sort of like reflect of how do I feel when I feel like that. And then on the other side, you have a sort of an instruction about what they're supposed to do. So this is Kurt Schwitters and Hilma af Klint, and it says glad, sint, trist. That means happy, sad, and angry. And then like a small field for like my total evaluation of this artist. And of course, it's not very precise how you're supposed to use that, but that doesn't matter because it's only to give pointers inside the museum what to look for. And most children interpreted it in different ways. Like some of them were walking around trying to cross all the boxes, like, no, I've found 5 sad feelings. And some were like, had 20 dots marked inside the sheet. But it's all good because how they use that isn't the important thing. The important thing is that they look at the art. So after they had filled out the agent card, they have to crawl through this magical tunnel. And that's where the experience really starts. And it's sort of exciting, and they don't know what's inside the art brain. So their expectations go up as they crawl. Some of the parents crawled with them, but we also had this side door for parents. And then inside, they would meet these feelings. We had 3 sections of the brain, and in each section there was like sample pictures and like the feeling represented as a person. This is very much like the Inside Outside movie by Pixar, which had been released the same year. So it was easy to sort of like use that as a hook and let the children understand it that way as well. And also like the feelings, they would like very much like to have the most art in their part. So they were trying to convince the children to see a lot of happy or angry art. It was also funny when we worked with Henny Onsdag, and they were going to like find these sample pictures from the archive, and they were like, all our art is sad. It's really difficult to find happy art. And then when they exited the art brain, they came into the museum and the 2 exhibitions, and there they met the art creatures. And the art creatures are sort of like these magical dream beings that walk around the inside of museums. If they asked, we told them the story that art creatures, they swarm for art. So if there's a lot of art in the same place, it attracts a lot of art creatures. So this is Hilma af Klint and the 2 art creatures inside that room. And they had the task of just like walking around, being a bit curious, either like if children walked up to them, talk with them. Some of the children are a bit scared of grown-ups, so they would sort of like lean down and try to talk to the children, invite them in. But they wouldn't like give them an answer. They would ask questions like, well, what do you think this painting is? And the children were like, well, maybe it's happy. It's pink. And I was like, yeah, maybe it's happy. And like help the children. They also like answered questions about how to fill out the form, which was mostly, well, how do you like to fill out the form? And then after they had like been the agents inside the museum, they returned to like the chamber outside the art brain, and then they sort of like they turned in their agent card, and it was stamped that they had completed their task, and also the helper of the archivist would sort of like write down in a logbook like what they had discovered inside the museum to make it sort of feel important, and also exciting for us to hear how the children perceived the art. And that's the art brain. And it worked. We had 300 visitors that day, and I think it really helped them to have a lot of fun. When I tell people about how we did this, a lot of them are like, I want an art brain too. I think art is really difficult. This is very nice. And we designed the art brain to be used on those 2 exhibitions. But after that, we have demonstrated it at the National Museum. And we also brought it to a gallery called F15 in Moss, where there was other exhibitions for a family event. And there it was like even more conceptual, abstract art, like this room just filled with different shades of blue, or like really, really strange pottery. And inside the blue room, one of the artists was present for the day, and I'll leave you just with a quote from him. He said, like, I make art for grown-ups, and then you've made this thing, and it's filled with children, and suddenly the art belongs to them. And I don't know how you did that. Thank you.